Welcome to this Fane online event. My name is Margaret Atwood. I'm the author of The Handmaid's Tale, and I'm going to be interviewing Bruce Miller, who is the showrunner of the television streamed Handmaid's Tale with MGM and Hulu. Bruce, how lovely to see you. What time
Uh,
is it there?
it is 10 in the morning, and it's lovely to see you as well. We don't get to spend as much time together as we would like, so this is
I'm
lovely.
sure we will again. But meanwhile, you have continued on filming and writing despite COVID. And where in the process are you right now?
Well, we are in the process that we do before we start filming. So right now we're writing the scripts. So that involves kind of gathering up a group of writers, and you do a lot of discussing. Before you even begin to figure out what you might want to write about, there's a lot of discussing and kind of pushing each other, testing things and things like that. So it's kind of a more, I imagine what goes on in a novelist's head, we just do out loud. So right now we're about halfway through the season. We figured out about halfway through the season, and then in a few weeks, a few months, we'll start prepping for the season, preparing to shoot the season, which takes quite a long time to build all the sets and to get everything together. Little more in the era of COVID, and then around the end of January, we'll start filming,
Wow.
and then that goes on for months and months, and then at the end of that, I'll do what's called post-production, which is just all the editing and the things you do to take that raw footage and finally put it together into a TV show. So we're not at the very beginning of the process, but we're at the beginning of the process.
And have you got any scripts yet ready for me to look at?
Of course, no, we don't. We will have scripts by the end of this week. I'm writing, and it's always difficult because when you go off to write, you aren't in the room with the writers, and so you feel like you're missing out on the discussion while you're off writing, and you come back and so many things have changed. But it's just part of the process. Writing scripts is a little more of a slow process than just brainstorming.
So I remember being in the physical writer's room right at the beginning. You actually let me in. You hadn't written anything on the whiteboard yet, but we did get our pictures taken in it. And is it now a Zoom? Is it now an online writing room?
Uh, it's interesting because this is the first time I've ever had to do this process remotely.
Mhm.
I've Other rooms have had Zoom rooms in the past, even before COVID, just for reasons of location or whatever. So right now we're doing a split room, really. So most of our writers meetings are on Zoom,
Mhm.
but we do have people in the office, a few days a week, who can meet and discuss and have face-to-face meetings. We're just trying to be very careful. We made it through the entire last season without anybody getting sick, and we'd like to do it again. But I think, although there are disadvantages really to the Zooming, the advantage of safety is worth it. So as it's a little slower, it's not as I don't think I think it's a little harder to go as deep with people because you don't know them quite as well because you're not in the same room. But it's Zoom has been a spectacular benefit and a lot more effective than I would have given it credit for at the beginning. It's a lot more of a comfortable environment for a writer's room than I would have thought. So yes, we've been mostly that, but trying to be together as much as we can safely.
So can you imagine if this had hit, if COVID had hit before there was online communication of this kind? And supposing you were doing a show, say, in the year 2000, and this had happened, it would have been a lot harder, don't you think?
Absolutely. I think, open, free, very, very smooth communication between the writers is what allows us to do what we do, because we're kind of collecting all that creative energy into a bunch of people and sharing it. So you need to have shorthand with people, and that's harder to develop in a Zoom room. And I was, in the 2000s, we had rooms where people tried to call in, on phones, and that was terrible. So I think the best thing that happened to this, honestly, was that we were all doing it together. All the writers were on Zoom, not half and half. So that made it easier. And also, honestly, we have a nice community here of writers in Los Angeles. Hollywood gets a bad reputation for being competitive, but everybody was very helpful in terms of giving each other tricks and ways to push the process forward in this new environment. Because I think everybody was literally, in the office on a Thursday and then home on Zoom on a Friday. So we were all dealing with the same cataclysmic change.
So did anybody get a cat filter stuck on their head?
Uh, I think that so far, almost the best part of this has been seeing into people's lives. I don't know how you feel about that, but the downside is you don't get to see them in person, but the upside, you get to see their spouses and their dogs and what they're doing, in the background, and their cat litter. And
well, not always. We hope we don't always. I mean, the early days of Zoom were pretty funny because people hadn't figured out that if they went behind somebody in their underpants, they were going to be on camera.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The Wild West. But
yeah,
Margaret, I always wonder if people are going to look back on this time and think of how amazing it was that we, with the primitive tools we had, were able to work together. Because I keep thinking in 5 years or 10 years, they're going to look back and say, really, just Zooms, little boxes on the screen? That seems so.
Bruce, don't get anything implanted into your head that will just don't do that. Okay.
Too late.
Somebody's going to tell you it's progress, but it's not.
It's not. Okay. I'll make a note to call you before I say yes.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. Now, when we started this, and I can remember being there and doing a cameo of bopping Elizabeth in the head and having my lady turn around and say to me, "Hit me harder." That was before Trump had even got elected. We were shooting it. And we were halfway through in November. Do you remember waking up on that morning, and what did you think?
I grew up in the East Coast, so and outside of New York, and so I knew who Donald Trump was, and so it wasn't a surprise the kind of person he was. I was very surprised that he had won the election. I very fortunately, on a personal level, had the show, and I turned off my radio and I turned off my television, and I had a big job to do. And I know that everybody on our cast and crew and staff had a difficult time coming to work the next morning, and it was a very heavy day, I remember. And what I remember that morning is everybody came down and felt like at least we're doing something that's meaningful, the next day. At least you're doing something that, contributes to the actual conversation people are having. But it was awful. I'm a giant supporter of.
Wasn't there a tiny little voice in your head that said, this show has just crossed the line from fiction into something a little closer to reality? Was there a little voice in your head that said that?
No, I'm not that prescient. All I could keep thinking was that I thought the show had such an unbelievable voice in a world with the first woman in the White House that I was, either way, it seemed like such a huge, amazing context for the show to come out in. That I was, it's kind of like I felt like, well, actually, 6 of one, half dozen of another in terms of the show, but in terms of things coming true, it was just it. I do have to say my imagination is not like yours. I'm often surprised, and I don't keep up with how people are feeling. And I was very, very, very surprised by the election, and continue to be surprised by.
I was not. I was not surprised.
Yeah.
I was I became very alert. I think it's sort of like there's something in the woods.
No, absolutely, yeah.
Very alert, and I also, yeah, I did have a sort of, my hair started standing up on end, and then I thought, is this my fault?
Oh, yeah.
I
Oh,
didn't do
I
it.
can imagine.
I did not
I didn't
do
do it. Yeah, put on your button that says I didn't do it. Yeah.
it. Anyway, so here we are, and it's now 2021, and it's about to be 2022. So we launched in April of 2017. Remember that?
No,
And
but yes, I'll yes.
remember.
Seems like another century, but yes.
It does seem like another century. So now it's 5 years later, and season 4 concluded with, is it 5 years or is it 6 years?
4. We're in 5.
We're in 5. Yeah,
We're
in
making season 5, so the end of season 4 was.
Yes. We ended with a real explosive last scene or last session. So you haven't told me yet, but I'm going to be very interested to see, where do we go from there? That is what I'm going to be interested in. So I've also, for some reason, I found myself reading a lot about the collapse of Berlin in World War II. A couple of novels, some real life accounts. It was quite a shambles. And so I'll be very interested to see where you go as Gilead is somewhat beginning to crumble.
Well, I think that the focus I always try to have is on June and June's personal journey, because I always feel like for me, the way I relate to kind of the things happening on the world stage is so different than I often can relate to in movies. It's always done on a big stage with the big players, and so the nice thing is that I think that from the novel is such a point of view novel that it works because her point of view is so limited, that here, moving forward, that I think that for me, moving on has always been, how would June move on? And certainly after the end of last season, you can think, wow, that's the closing of a chapter for June, but also it's this, she's done this thing that she always wanted to do, and now she's that person who's done that thing. And so June moving on, I like the fact that we're dealing with the repercussions of her actions, not just having her actions stand and ending the show.
Every one of these kinds of actions comes with a cost. So
absolutely,
you're looking at costs. What did it cost her to do that? There's no free lunch. And even when you've done things you have thought were right, there's still a cost to that. So I'll be
absolutely, yeah.
I'll be very interested as you nervously send a script over to me, just having reminded yourself that maybe you should do that.
It isn't done yet, so it's okay.
Oh yeah, that's your story. What if it's done and you just kind of forgot you're supposed to send it? But never mind. I'll be very interested in it.
But I agree. I think that all actions have cost, and a lot of times on television, or a lot of times in popular fiction, that's not really so much a part of it. And here, the benefit for TV, I always think the benefit we have is that we can always go past, we're continuing. And so I try to use that benefit as much as possible. The fact that there is always a tomorrow on television. There's not always a tomorrow on every other media, but on TV, June's got to get up tomorrow. What's she going to do? And so that's what compels me. And for me, I mean, it was such a huge departure. Maybe it wasn't a huge departure for Offred, but it was a huge departure for June, the end of the season. So now,
yeah, it'll be very interesting. And the other character, of course, I'm very focused on is Aunt Lydia. And again, background reading, you read about the internal machinations of power elites and dictatorships. And they're always trying to do each other down, it seems.
It does
Even,
seem like it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It does seem like it almost comically, they start hollowing it out from the inside as soon as they, start having conflicts with each other.
well, each one wants some sort of medal, or
Yeah.
and even in the last days of Hitler's bunker, they were still doing each other's down because they thought they were competing to see who was going to succeed him. like who would want that job?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the ruler of nothing. Yeah.
Well, they wanted who can be first to go and surrender to the Allies. It was quite amazing. So I'll be interested to see what sort of power struggles are going to be going on behind the scenes of Gilead, because of course there will be some. And now that you've done away with Commander Fred in such a gruesome manner, I'm sure there's going to be some discussion about that.
Absolutely, and I think that Lydia is at the core of that. As the Lydia that has developed, from the novel and then through the show and then on through the Testament. She's such a power player. Really a string puller. And the thing that I like is that she's really understanding both power down and power up. How to influence. She's always been very good at wielding power down, but
Yes,
power up is a different thing.
yeah.
And I'm fascinated by the fact that in the last season she really was kind of overseen by other ants and she manipulated her way to the top of that, and I think she's seeing the sky's the limit. So as we move forward, she's had a little interaction with Lawrence, but that relationship and that it's so wonderful to see.
Yeah, that's going to be very interesting. But of course the sky is not the limit for her, because she is female, and
Yeah.
she can only ever have a position within that. She can never be
Right.
top commander.
Yeah, and I think that's what all of our women who are complicit realize. I think it's their.
They're awfully stupid.
Yeah. Yes. It is. Yeah. It is the sobering prize at the end of the maze is that you're a second-class citizen no matter what. So
yeah, so top amongst the second-class citizens.
Yeah.
That is how those kinds of regimes work, when they have strictly delineated hierarchies such as those. Anyway, I'll be very interested to see what you do with Aunt Lydia, and also with Moira going forward, and what you're going to do, because there would be a lot of people escaping over the borders at this point, and a lot of those people would be Black if they could get out of the national homeland into which they've been stuffed. So Gilead rather stupidly placed that next to the Canadian border.
It was North Dakota, was it? Some horrible,
a bad part of
farming. Yeah. Well, I know that the refugee crisis around the world is so big and fluid, but there seems to be so much more information about it now with the internet. We've been able to get so many more personal stories, and a lot of our show is a refugee show. We're following a refugee experience in Toronto. So it's fascinating to me that it doesn't really seem like that from the outside, but once we get into it, our discussions with people who deal with either settling people's corporeal needs or by helping them deal with their psychological damage from the experience, so much of that is what our characters are living with.
Well, there's a huge amount of that in the world today, and I have to link that right back to the climate crisis, because a lot of these wars and civil wars are resource wars due to shrinking resources and worse harvests. The land becoming uninhabitable where people once were living. So that wasn't something I was thinking about in 1985 when I was writing the book, but I think we have to think about it now.
Oh, absolutely. And I know that we definitely made Gilead greener because that seemed to be the, part of the mixture that might have sold for them, the idea of a greener future.
Yeah. So people are already talking about, well, we don't want an eco dictatorship. So how do we keep, how do we, on the one hand, deal with the climate crisis, but on the other hand, keep that from being used to set up a dictatorship?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you see this kind of push and pull going on in public discourse to some extent. But it's going to probably go on more. On the other hand, we're moving from a kind of petro dictatorship to a dictatorship, because
right, yeah,
oil companies calling the shots previously.
Right, so it might be a little more egalitarian, might be better just because it's a little more egalitarian.
Well, that is always our hope. As a student of utopias and dystopias, we know that a utopia can go pear-shaped pretty quickly. So what sorts of controls do you put in to keep that from happening? Anyway, that would be the backstory to the story that you're telling, which is, what does June do when she gets up in the morning? And what sort of, quotes, normal life can she hope to have?
And that's absolutely kind of the philosophy that I think that I got out of the book, from, kind of just as a storytelling philosophy, is June getting up in the morning is the show. And it's so, because I think that's the victory every day for June. Everybody would always say, she's back in Gilead, what kind of wins does she get? And I would always say, the end of the day, when she's alive, it's a huge win. And if any of her friends are alive, it's even better. And so I think that the show does live with June getting up in the morning and the challenges she faces, and going through the things she's going through. Even though we as a culture are going through some of those traumas that are removed, they still feel like ours.
For sure, a lot of them do, and a lot of them. So somebody looking at any sort of really unequal society is going to say, well, this is utopia for some people, but it's dystopia for a whole bunch of others. So how do we, so one of the things that you can say about June's life in Gilead, which is said, look, at least you're getting 3 meals a day.
Yep. And you have a purpose.
It's useful. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, I think you want there to be truth in what Lydia is selling a lot. And I think that Lydia, is trying to, I don't like characters to lie when they don't have to. And I think Lydia bends the truth in a way and makes it seem like, as you said, 3 meals in a day. She is giving you a version of the life that doesn't on paper sound so bad, a life of purpose, a life, where you're taken care of.
If you bought into it, it wouldn't be bad.
Yeah, it wouldn't be. I mean, although it seems so that the sexual slavery of it, no matter how you couch it, is just corrosive, that even the people who believe in it are eventually snapped.
It's just 19th century ideology. Women weren't supposed to enjoy sex. They were supposed to be for having children. That was the idea a century and a half ago. So they wouldn't consider it sexual slavery. They would consider it fulfilling woman's deeper purpose or something like that, because that's what was being sold. And as for enjoying it, that wasn't why you were here. You weren't here to enjoy yourself, said the Puritans. It wasn't
that wasn't in the offer. That wasn't in the package.
A virtuous life, and enjoying it was not part of living a virtuous. In fact, if you enjoyed things too much, you probably were not living a virtuous life.
I think it's one of the things that the show that we've been able to do on the show, because of the writers, but also because of the actors, is you can see, not just sympathize with Lydia's point of view or Serena's point of view, but understand that as intelligent women, they can hold that point of view. And that's, I think, a testament to Anne Dowd and Yvonne Strahovski, where they can, really, dig deep into these characters who have cruelty at the front and find love and logic and hope, inside.
Yeah, so they say. But of course, you don't know with any of these people, nor did you know with any of Stalin's group, which ones were true believers, which ones were opportunists, and which ones were just trying to save their necks. Because in a society where everybody is looking at you and waiting for you to make a slip, especially if you're in a power struggle for more power amongst the elite, there's going to be some opportunism and some saving your neck in all of these decisions that you make.
If someone's trying to cut your neck off, you'll always try to save it, I guess.
Well, unless you're a complete masochist. Yeah, so read up on the Machiavelli, which Lydia obviously has. So keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer.
And I think it's giving this conversation wouldn't be complete without talking about your relationship with Ann Dowd and how you got it really has been a lovely, close relationship. And I think what it's allowed Anne to do is feel much more comfortable asking questions and pushing the character and trying different things, because she feels really like she's has an open discussion going on. But really, I think that you guys have added such richness and fearlessness to the way that the character is portrayed, and so much affection for the girls. I mean, Anne as a woman, Ann Dowd has so much affection for the other actors on the show, and for you and me. I mean, she's a lovely, warm person.
She's such a nice person, but as Lawrence of Livia, no, it wasn't. Ralph Richardson, Sir John Gielgud said to somebody, he said, how do you? I've been doing method acting and playing a tramp. I slept all night in the ditch. How do you do it? He said, my dear boy, it's called acting. Anyway.
And yes, and we have a bunch where they really are lovely and respectful, and then they really get into it and find that incredibly fun. But I think that's because of the environment around them, and that includes you, because I think, on a show like this, coming from a novel, you're the godmother of us all. And if I was pushing people in one direction and you were pushing people in another,
too much responsibility, Bruce. Anyway, so she came over and she helped us launch the Testaments in London when we did it at the National Theatre. And it was quite uncanny. She walked onto stage and she was Ann Dowd, and then she did a thing and she turned into Aunt Lydia. It was very creepy.
She gets taller.
But also sort of slanted. She
rolls her shoulders. Yes.
Yeah, she gets sort of twisted.
Oh yeah, well, she does have injuries, and she plays those injuries. She doesn't
sort of Richard III.
It's so funny. Yvonne in the first season got like sore jaw from holding herself so tense as Serena, because Yvonne is the most loose person, and then you see her and she was just so that eventually she was like, oh my gosh, I don't realize I'm holding my jaw so tight, it's getting sore because I'm such a mean person.
Well, a repressed person.
A repressed person. It is always one of the great pleasures of what we do, to not just be able as an author to kind of think about your characters, but be able to kind of have that each intermediary person of an actor. To be able to sit down with Lizzie and discuss June is such a pleasure, because she has a different idea than I do, and that collaboration is just a secret pleasure that I don't think people realize how much fun that makes my job.
And she also has been a producer on the show, has she not? And she directed.
Yes.
Did she not directed one or two of the episodes?
She has come a long way from you hitting her in the head. Yes. She is a
you got to smarten up and turn into a director right now.
Yeah. Whack. Yeah. Get yourself straight, kid. Yeah. Lizzie has been a partner from the beginning. I mean, when the show's called The Handmaid's Tale, you have to partner up with someone. You can't think of it as an employee. Lizzie also, Elizabeth, has been on a lot of television shows that have run a long time. She was on West Wing. She was on Mad Men. She really has knowledge of how to do this, which is singular. I mean, there's not that many people who have been on that many shows that have gone 6, 7, 10 years. So she knew what she was getting into. And at the beginning, she had trepidation. She didn't know me. We had friends in common, but she knew that this, TV isn't dating. TV is a marriage, and when the show's called The Handmaid's Tale and you're the handmaid, it really is. But she wanted to take on the role of producing, and she, and I was very eager, but I wanted to know whether she wanted to do it in name only, or did she want to really do it? And she wanted to really do it. And it's an incredible amount of work that she does. She's my creative partner. I wouldn't be able to do it without her, but I don't know how she gets the work she needs to get done in a day, because she just is so remarkably busy. She directed last season. She's going to be directing in season 5 as well. She did an extraordinary job.
How many episodes might she be directing, or can you tell that?
Well, first, for now, she's doing 2, but I mean, we never know. With COVID, we tend to lose the scheduling, and stuff is difficult. So she may end up doing more, but right now she's on for doing 2. Last season, I cannot tell you the amount of respect I have for Elizabeth Moss. Last season was her first time directing, and I decided I'd write the script. And after some discussion, we decided to make it a June heavy episode, not June light, so that there would be a lot of June directing, because she was saying I'm there anyway. She started to direct. We directed for a week, then we shut down for 6 months. This is her first time directing ever. And so she's directed 2 or 3 days, and then she had to sit around and then come back with masks and tests and half the number of people on the set and everything. And she, without a blink, she just took it on, and she made a beautiful, excellent episode of television. And you cannot tell that it was made under restrained conditions, which it was. It was and the other part of it was, I wasn't there. I never saw her the entire time. We talked on Zoom, but normally I would have been next to her every day on set, and I wasn't there once. And she did it completely on her own with the crew and the cast there. But I was thrilled that they were all able to work like that. But I wasn't there to monitor. She was directing and producing on the set, and God bless her, she did excellent, excellent work.
So then you would see the footage.
Yeah. Yes. And, I always hate the footage when I see the footage. Yes. And it was what I do. The way it works is the director directs, and then in film, they're involved much more in the post-production than in television. They send it to an editor, and they work together on a cut, and then I get it, and then I work on it as a producer in television. But normally what happens is a lot of people in my position watch the dailies. I don't. I let my editor watch the dailies and tell me if something's wrong, because two real reasons. One is I really wouldn't be able to tell. I mean, compared to an editor, I wouldn't be able to know if something subtle was going wrong. It would be better if the editor talks to Lizzie directly, and they did. And the other thing is, I don't want to ruin it. I don't want to ruin the experience of seeing it the first time as a drama from beginning to end, because I'm not going to get that again. And so what I do is I just call every morning and check in with my editors. And so when Lizzie was directing, the editor was Wendy Howell Martin, who was nominated for an Emmy for that episode and has won Emmys before. She would always call and go, "Oh, it's fabulous. It's fabulous." So I didn't worry at all. I mean, Wendy is very hard to impress, and she was thrilled. And they were, so in the end, I didn't watch footage coming in. I wasn't nervous about Lizzie at all. She was very well supported. I had seen what she was going to do. The editor was thrilled. And when I saw the cut that came together, it was one of the best. It's called a director's cut, which is their version of things. And usually it's a lot longer, and because they don't have to subscribe to the time frame that I do. But it was a wonderful episode, and it felt like an excellent episode of the show. So I mean, it could have turned out badly, but I think that letting, Lizzie's a grown-up artist, and letting a grown-up artist out and try to do her best work especially when she's dealing with it also being her first time, I think was the best move. She had a lot of support up there. She didn't need me saying in her ear, "You're oh wow, you're really good with it." She's a pro. She knows what she's doing.
Well, great. Wonder if there's anything else you can share with us.
I'd like to share the story. I wanted to share the story. I don't know if you know about casting Yvonne. Do you know the story about me casting Yvonne?
I don't think so. I think I might have heard it, but tell it again.
So at the very beginning of the show, in the novel, Serena Joy was an older character, and and they weren't of the same age. And I had thought about it, and just as a series moving along, I thought there might be more dynamic between them if Serena was in a position where she was envying June today, not the past. So she's ending June's position of being fertile today. And so I was thinking about it, and then her agent called, Yvonne's agent called us and said she'd like to come in and audition. She had read the script and she read the character and she read the book and she loves. And really, everybody was saying, "Oh, no, she's too young and she's too beautiful." I mean, it really is kind of startling. I mean, I know she's beautiful on TV. She's more beautiful in person. I mean, it's a freak of nature. She's absolutely lovely, and so is she too beautiful to play this character? Well, she came in and read, the scene. Now, well, actors of her stature don't often come in and read. You make them offers. I had seen her in all her work and thought she was excellent, but I didn't know she could do this. So she came in and read, and she was so good. And the fact was, she was the only person who made me feel sympathy for Serena. Oh. So after the audition was over, I said to her, "So why did you come in and read?" And it was so funny because she had come in as Serena, and then that goes away and Yvonne comes. And Yvonne is a loud Australian, kind of brassy, fun, and was telling me what she thought of Serena and how fascinated she was, and how she said, I'm always interested in playing strong women, but she is strong and I really don't like her, and that's really interesting. And after that conversation, I was like, okay, she's our Serena, and I talked to the network, and it was like a big jump to go to her as Serena. And she was so patient. I kept saying, "You're the person," and she waited and waited and waited till the whole process had gone through. And then in the end, she just, and I cannot tell you, from the moment she walked on, she was Serena. And the idea that having anybody else, it just didn't make sense with anybody else from the time she did it the first time in a little office, not on set. And from after the first day or the first time I saw her in the outfit, she's been spectacular, but that was the biggest reconception. And I have to say, it was an Yvonne who really reconceived it and brought it to life. It wasn't me reconceiving and saying to Yvonne, "How about this?" She really read and it really has been the way that she works. She's funny and casual and hippy dippy as a person, and she's the most serious working actress. She is so focused and serious. It's great. It's a great combination. A lot of them, our actors, are lovely, casual, warm people, and then they are absolute bulldogs when it comes to their work, which I love. All of them would be absolutely kind till I wasn't giving them an answer they needed, and then they would be very aggressive, which is what I like very much. But we're incredibly lucky with our actors, as you well know. I mean,
yes.
they're a collection of
Tiffany top team, no question.
Yes.
So when people are talking to me, they somehow think that I have some kind of control over this process. So I just have to explain to them that actually I don't, and that it's the team that is doing it, and that I have a kind of I've got a ringside seat. I've got a ringside seat, but I'm not actually in the ring.
And I also, people often ask how we collaborate, and I said, we usually talk a few times during the season as I'm starting to think about the next season, and whether or not it's the things that I ask you or whether the things that you bring up, that's where the next season kind of comes from. And then I normally we would sit down at the beginning of the season and sit down and talk, but we weren't physically together. But wasn't even able to do that with Lizzie in my normal way at the beginning of the season. But that's what we've done in the past. And I said, it's a real conversation through the whole year.
Yeah, I remember one. Do you remember? You probably don't because you were on the other end of the line. I was outside of a children's store on my phone having a very intense conversation with you.
I don't remember. I remember having breakfast. The first time I met you was breakfast at the hotel, and you came with your walking partner, and it was intimidating, but very briefly. You were
Yeah,
quite good at disarming me and making me less nervous. But you know, I think you do have more of an influence in the process because you and I talk, and that's where I kind of start noodling things. So I think maybe it isn't direct, but you know, we have a conversation about Serena, and that kind of turns into Serena's story in a, you know, adding, subtracting, growing way. So I think that it very much is. It seems to me that I don't feel comfortable going off until we've had earlier conversations.
I do remember saying to you, "You can't kill that baby." Remember that?
I need that baby. Please don't
Yeah,
kill that baby.
maybe, and I said you were not allowed to kill Aunt Lydia, and you said, "Well, I
Yes.
wasn't going to anyway." Just injured.
It is funny though. I think that you know, I'm very lucky that you're comfortable with collaborating because you know the novelist's resume doesn't necessarily have that box to check. It doesn't need to. You know, works and plays well with others isn't necessarily on the list, and it's lovely. And I think that part of it is that you're kind of a more of an expert at having this particular bit of work adapted than I am at adapting. It had been a play and a
Yeah,
opera and a ballet.
that's true. And I used to write for television and movies. And my first job as a scriptwriter was with Tony Richardson back at the end of the 60s. And that was very plays well with others because it was very, very collaborative. So he would say, "We need a scene with two people in it." So I'd go off and write a scene with two people. And come back
It
to,
is great practice, though, isn't it? The
yeah,
times
very,
where,
very good. Yeah. So,
as before I leave your audience, I'll tell them that you know, what we do is we write a script and then we figure out how to shoot it and the locations and everything, and it's scheduled quite rigorously. You know, 2 days here, 1 day here, these actors. Every once in a while, for some reason or another, usually an angry executive, a script gets thrown out. You're not going to do that script. Then you have a set of locations and people that you have to then write another story that happens to take place, you know, in Bob's house, and then in a gold mine, and then on a space station, and then in a brothel. And that's what you got. And you go, okay, well, what are my gold mine brothels for? And so that's the skill, you know, that I mean, I need two people and they have to be on a plane.
yeah,
Go.
exactly. Like that. Yeah.
So
Well,
it's fun. I mean, it's part of the fun. And I think that luckily on this show, you know, Hulu and MGM, there's never been a script thrown out ever, thank God. But on other shows that I've worked on, so there is a bit of kind of scrappy, under heavy fire fun of television that I'm glad you got to experience, so that you at
yeah.
least know what we're going through.
Oh, yeah, several times. And I've adapted other people's work as well. So yeah, and I can understand the moment at which the novelist says, "I hate this, I hate you, I hate everything about this. Why did I ever allow this to be done?" So I understand that part, and I consider myself very, very lucky to have had such a great team of people working on the show because it could have been quite otherwise.
I
So
agree. We a lot of work and a lot of luck, and you know, a lot of it has to do with, you know, people rigorously checking out other people's reputations.
who does it?
Yeah.
Oh, I won't tell you what I heard about you.
Oh, please don't. But please keep spreading it, because you know, I I like to keep things quiet. Um,
So that's our minutes, as far as I can tell, Bruce. So thank you very much. I know that you donated this time in aid of the Pelee Island Bird Observatory. And thank you to Fane Productions for making it all happen. I've worked with them over the years in some pretty odd locations. I once was on a tour with them and I got shingles on a helicopter in Tasmania. I'm just
I'm glad this was easier than that.
yeah, I had Will and Alex, who I was traveling with in Australia, and my daughter was very upset that I got shingles. It was going to get into my eye, and I was going to lose my eye, and I was going to have a glass eye. So we were having breakfast, and I showed her the phone, and I said, "Here's Will and Alex to say hello." And she said, "Hello. Now make them turn that phone right around now. You need to go to a doctor."
Well,
So
when they care about you, they're bossy.
Yeah, I didn't lose my eye. Hooray.
Good.
Yes, I'm pleased about that too. And it's wonderful to see you.
It is wonderful to see you too. And it's been, I agree. I feel very lucky that it's been such a process where people actually have enjoyed working hard, and enjoyed working with each other. So, but I'm very glad I was able to do this, and a wonderful conversation and a wonderful charity. So please take care. Thank you so much.
And thank you.